The acrid smell of melting plastic filled my brother's garage workshop. I watched, frozen, as my grandson Derek's face drained of color while he stared at the workbench, where bright orange flames consumed the prototype he'd been demonstrating to the family just moments earlier. "Whoops," my 14-year-old grandnephew Kyle said, that smug little grin plastered across his face. "Grandpa Gerald says Derek's just playing inventor anyway. He says people like you two need to stop pretending you're important." I kept my expression perfectly neutral, though my jaw tightened. "Kyle, do you understand what you just destroyed?" He shrugged, examining his fingernails with theatrical boredom. "That stupid 3D printed thing? Derek's been going on about his revolutionary medical device all evening. Dad says it's just expensive plastic toys." My brother Gerald emerged from the house, beer in hand, chuckling instead of disciplining his grandson. "Oh, for heaven's sake, it's just plastic. Print another one, Derek. Kyle's just being a teenager." "That was the functional prototype," Derek said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The only one. I was presenting it to the investors on Monday. They're flying in from Boston specifically to see it work." My sister-in-law Patricia glanced up from her phone. "Well, you shouldn't have brought it to a family gathering, should you? These things happen when you wave your projects around. Gerald's right, just print another." "It took 9 months to calibrate," I said quietly, my engineer's mind already calculating the impossibility of recreating the precise specifications. The sensors, the embedded circuitry, the biocompatible materials. This wasn't something you print overnight. Gerald waved his hand dismissively, that condescending gesture I'd endured for 63 years. "So recalibrate it. What's the big deal? You've always been dramatic about your little engineering projects, haven't you? Acting like you're still working at some important firm when you've been retired for 5 years." My older sister Ruth nodded from the sofa. "You know, Gerald has a point. You've gotten rather full of yourself since Derek started his startup. Supporting your grandson's hobby is lovely, but this constant talk of investors and medical breakthroughs is a bit much, don't you think?" I looked at Derek, whose eyes were filling with tears. He'd spent the better part of a year developing this non-invasive glucose monitoring device. This wasn't a hobby. His prototype could change diabetes management for millions. 3 venture capital firms were competing to lead his Series A funding round, and the Monday presentation was meant to finalize the terms. "Kyle," I said calmly, turning to my grandnephew, "can you explain to me why you thought it was acceptable to destroy someone else's property?" He rolled his eyes. "Dad told me someone needed to knock you both down a peg. You walk around here like you're better than everyone, with your engineering degree and your startup company. Dad says Derek's whole business is probably fake anyway, just like when you used to brag about designing bridges when you were really just doing paperwork. I designed the structural systems for 3 major suspension bridges in British Columbia, but this wasn't the time for that conversation." Gerald put his arm around Kyle protectively. "Don't interrogate my grandson. You brought a supposedly valuable prototype to a family dinner. That's poor judgment. If it were really important, you'd have kept it somewhere secure." Patricia walked in carrying a tray of appetizers. "What's all the fuss about?" "Kyle melted Derek's medical device," Ruth explained. "Now they're making it into a federal case." Patricia actually laughed. "Oh, honestly, boys will be boys. Derek, you're what, 28? Surely you've learned to keep track of your things by now." 28 years old and still relying on Grandpa to fund his pipe dreams," Gerald added. "Speaking of which, if this device was so valuable, why are you still driving that 15-year-old Honda Civic? Shouldn't you be in a Tesla by now?" "The Honda is reliable," Derek said, his voice shaking. "The Honda is all you can afford," Patricia corrected. "Look, we love that you're pursuing your interests, but Gerald's been saying for months that you're exaggerating this whole medical device story. A real company with real investors doesn't operate out of a grandfather's garage." Gerald set down his beer, warming to his subject. "Remember when Dad said he'd invented some revolutionary bridge design? Turned out he'd just suggested a minor modification to someone else's work. The family tendency to overstate achievements is strong, apparently. That modification had saved the provincial government $42 million and earned me a professional engineering award, but again, not the time." Ruth stood up. "Your brother has a point. There's nothing wrong with helping your grandson with his hobbies, but claiming it's $1 million business venture makes you both look foolish. And now you're upset because a teenager accidentally damaged a plastic model? It's disproportionate." I rose from my chair. "Derek, we should go. I need to make some phone calls. Running away, as usual, Gerald called after us. Can't handle a little reality check from the family. Kyle snickered. Bye, great Uncle Thomas. Sorry about your fake medical device. In my truck, Derek broke down completely. Grandpa, that was everything. 9 months of work. The investors won't wait. MedTech Innovations and Boston Biocapital are both flying in Monday morning. Without a working prototype, there's no demonstration, no funding, no company. I'm finished. I pulled out my phone. Give me a moment, son. The first call was to James Richardson at National Bank of Canada. We'd served together on the board of the Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of British Columbia for 8 years. Thomas, good evening. What can I do for you? James, I need you to review the commercial credit line for Gerald Morrison and Patricia Morrison. Account number I'll text you. Freeze any available credit immediately. There was a pause. That's a significant action. May I ask the context? Family matter. Their grandson destroyed valuable property, and they've demonstrated remarkably poor judgment regarding financial responsibility. Understood. Consider it done. The freeze will be effective within the hour. The second call was to Margaret Chen, Senior Vice President at Western Canada Properties. We'd worked together on a housing development project a decade earlier, and she'd mentioned last year that she'd acquired several commercial real estate portfolios in the Fraser Valley. Thomas, it's been too long. What's going on? Margaret, do you still hold the Riverside Commercial Plaza properties in Abbotsford? Yes. About 40 units. Mix of retail and light industrial. Why do you ask? One of your tenants is Morrison Auto Repair, Unit 12. Gerald Morrison, I need you to review that lease very carefully. I believe you'll find he's in violation of several terms: the unauthorized storage of hazardous materials, the unpermitted structural modifications he made to expand into the adjoining storage space. Margaret's tone shifted immediately. I wasn't aware of modifications. That's absolutely a lease violation. Storage of hazardous materials beyond approved quantities is grounds for immediate termination. I thought you should know. Gerald has become unreliable. I'd hate to see liability issues damage your property portfolio. I'll have my property manager conduct an inspection first thing Monday morning. If what you're saying is accurate, we'll be issuing a 30-day notice to vacate. Derek stared at me. Grandpa, what did you just do? Ensured that actions have appropriate consequences. We drove to my house in silence. Derek kept glancing at me, questions clearly forming, but he was smart enough to wait. I'd raised him after his parents died in that car accident when he was 7. He understood that I never acted without careful consideration. At 6 the next morning, Gerald called. His voice was already elevated. What the hell did you do? Patricia tried to buy groceries this morning. The card was declined. All of them. Every single credit card we have declined. Good morning, Gerald. How are you? Don't play games with me. Fix this. Now. I'm afraid I don't have access to your credit accounts. That's between you and your financial institutions. This is because of yesterday. Because Kyle burned Derek's little science project. You've lost your mind. I haven't done anything. Banks make their own decisions based on account review and risk assessment. Bull. You've got connections everywhere. Everyone knows that. You did something. If your credit has been frozen, perhaps the banks have concerns about your financial judgment. These institutions don't make such decisions lightly. His voice cracked slightly. Patricia is humiliated. She was standing at the checkout with a full cart. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is? I imagine Derek found it equally embarrassing when your family dismissed 9 months of his work as a plastic toy. It's not the same thing, isn't it? He hung up on me. 20 minutes later, my sister Ruth called. Thomas, Gerald says you've frozen their credit cards. That can't possibly be true. The bank made its own decision, Ruth. I have no authority over their accounts. This is ridiculous. Kyle is a child. You can't punish Gerald and Patricia for something a 14-year-old did. Kyle destroyed a medical device prototype worth approximately $300,000 in development costs. That prototype was scheduled for presentation to investors representing a potential $12 million funding round. That's not child's play. That's serious financial sabotage. Sabotage? He's a teenager. It was an accident. Was it? Kyle quoted Gerald verbatim. Dad says people like you need to stop pretending you're important. Dad says Derek's business is probably fake. Those were Gerald's words coming from Kyle's mouth. Gerald deliberately taught his grandson to undermine Derek's work. Even so, freezing someone's credit is extreme. Less extreme than teaching a child that destroying other people's life work is acceptable behavior. She hung up too. Around noon, Gerald called again. The anger had shifted to something closer to panic. Thomas, we received a letter from Western Canada Properties. They're terminating our lease. 30 days to vacate the shop. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate? The auto repair shop is our entire income. They're claiming we violated the lease with unauthorized modifications and hazardous material storage. Did you? Silence. Gerald, when you knocked down that wall to expand into the storage unit next door, did you get approval from the landlord? That was years ago. They never said anything. And the drum of used motor oil in the back corner? The one that's been there for how long? 3 years? 4? That's well beyond the permitted quantity for commercial storage in that zoning classification. How do you called them? You told them to inspect us? I made them aware of potential liability issues on their property. Margaret Chen is a responsible property manager. She's simply doing her due diligence. This will destroy us. 30 days? We can't find new commercial space. Get permits, move all the equipment, transfer the business registration. All of that takes months. And we can't apply for loans or new credit because you've blacklisted us somehow. I haven't blacklisted anyone. You've created your own difficulties through poor planning and rule violations. Please, Thomas, I'm sorry about yesterday. Kyle shouldn't have damaged Derek's project. I shouldn't have laughed. But this is our livelihood. You're taking away how we feed our family. One might argue you took away Derek's livelihood first. The difference is that he'd actually built something valuable before you destroyed it. You've simply been operating in violation of regulations and hoping no one would notice. That evening, Derek found me in my workshop. Grandpa, Uncle Gerald called me. He's desperate. Aunt Patricia is having anxiety attacks. They're talking about losing the business. They're facing consequences for years of poor decisions. The lease violations existed long before yesterday, but you're the one who reported them. Yes. Is that fair? I set down the circuit board I'd been examining. Derek, let me ask you something. What did you learn in that accelerator program last year? The one in Toronto? Which part? The module on competitive business strategy. He thought for a moment. That information is leverage. That positioning is everything. That you need to understand your vulnerabilities before your competitors do. And did you understand your vulnerabilities? I thought I did. But you brought your only functional prototype to a family gathering. You handed your greatest vulnerability to people who've spent years diminishing your achievements and mine. You gave them the opportunity to destroy it, and they took that opportunity. His face flushed. You're right. That was stupid. Not stupid. Trusting. You assumed family meant safety. But Gerald has resented my success for 40 years. When you started succeeding, that resentment transferred to you. He taught Kyle that our accomplishments weren't real because accepting them as real would mean confronting his own choices. So this is about teaching me a lesson? No. This is about teaching Gerald a lesson. And Kyle, and Patricia, and Ruth, and everyone else in that family who thinks it's acceptable to tear people down out of jealousy. The next morning, my entire family assembled in my driveway. Gerald, Patricia, Kyle, Ruth, even my younger cousin Donald, who'd driven in from Victoria. The tension was extraordinary. Gerald was holding papers, his hands actually trembling. These documents. The lease termination notice. It lists the property owner as TRM Holdings Limited. That's you, isn't it? Thomas Robert Morrison? TRM Holdings is a numbered company I established in 2019 when I diversified my retirement investments. Yes, I'm the principal shareholder. Patricia's face went completely white. You own the entire plaza? The holding company purchased the property portfolio from Margaret Chen's firm 16 months ago. I retained her management company to handle day-to-day operations. I don't typically involve myself in individual tenant issues. Until now, Gerald said bitterly. Until you decided to make it personal. Until you made it personal, I corrected. When you taught your grandson to destroy my grandson's work. When you stood in front of your entire family and declared that Derek's medical device was fake. That our achievements were exaggerated fantasies, that we needed to be brought down to earth. You made it extraordinarily personal. Ruth stepped forward, attempting to mediate. Thomas, this has gone too far. Family doesn't weaponize business relationships against each other. We settle our disagreements. We don't destroy each other's livelihoods over arguments. You're absolutely right, Ruth. Family shouldn't do this. Family shouldn't mock each other's life work. Family shouldn't teach children to sabotage each other's success because they can't handle someone doing well. Family shouldn't spend 40 years dismissing someone's professional achievements as paperwork and minor modifications. But that's exactly what has happened in this family for my entire adult life. And yesterday, you all stood by and watched. Some of you even participated while Derek's prototype was destroyed and his work was called worthless. None of you saw any problem with that. Kyle was crying now, the earlier smugness completely gone. His voice was small. I'm really sorry, Great Uncle Thomas. I didn't understand it was real. I didn't know it mattered. Dad told me Derek was just pretending, like you used to pretend about bridge design. He said you make up stories to seem important. And what do you think now, Kyle? I think Dad was wrong. I think I was really, really wrong. I'm sorry. The tears appeared genuine, the remorse real. Gerald put his hand on Kyle's shoulder. His own eyes were wet. Don't put all of this on Kyle. This is my fault. I'll admit it completely. I've been jealous, Thomas. You've always been the successful one, the engineer, the award winner, the one everyone respects. I'm just the guy who fixes cars. When Derek started his company, and you were helping him, it felt like I was watching it all happen again, watching you two succeed while I stayed in the same place I've been for 30 years. When Kyle burned that prototype, there was this ugly part of me that was glad. I wanted to see you knocked down. I wanted to see Derek fail, because I couldn't stand watching another Morrison succeed while I struggled. That was wrong. It was petty and cruel, and I'm sorry. I'm deeply sorry. I waited, letting the words settle. Are you sorry for what happened, or sorry that there are consequences? Both. I'm genuinely sorry for everything, for teaching Kyle the wrong values, for undermining your work and Derek's work, for not recognizing how hard you've both worked and what you've actually accomplished. Please, Thomas, we'll do whatever you want. We'll apologize publicly. We'll explain to Kyle exactly why what he did was wrong. We'll pay for Derek's lost opportunity somehow. Just please don't take the shop. Please don't make my family homeless because I was a jealous idiot. I looked at Derek. He gave me a small nod. The termination notice outlines your options, I said. You have 30 days to vacate, or you can negotiate modified lease terms. Patricia wiped her eyes. What kind of modified terms? First, immediate compliance with all building codes and safety regulations. You'll hire a licensed contractor to properly restore the structural wall you removed. You'll dispose of all hazardous materials according to provincial regulations. You'll obtain all required permits for your business operations. Gerald nodded quickly. Done. Absolutely. We'll comply with everything. Second, you and Patricia will write a formal letter to Derek, apologizing for dismissing his work and for the destruction of his prototype. You'll acknowledge the real value of what he's building and the real damage that was caused. We'll write it today, Patricia said. Third, Kyle will complete a restorative justice program. He'll spend 40 hours this summer interning at Derek's company, not as punishment, but as education. He needs to understand what goes into building something valuable. He needs to see firsthand that Derek's work isn't pretend. Kyle looked up, surprise replacing the fear. You'd let me intern there? After what I did? If you're genuinely willing to learn, yes. The best way to understand the value of creation is to participate in it. I'll do it. I promise I'll work hard. And fourth, I continued, looking directly at Gerald, you're going to use every connection you have in the automotive industry to help Derek. His glucose monitoring device needs field testing in real-world conditions. You're going to introduce him to the trucking companies you service, the fleet managers, the drivers who have diabetes and could benefit from this technology. You're going to use your business network to support his business. You're going to prove that you actually respect what we do. Gerald's voice was barely audible. I can do that. I know a lot of long-haul truckers. Diabetes is huge in that community. I can make those introductions. Ruth was shaking her head in disbelief. You're really going to force them through all of this? I'm offering them an opportunity to make genuine amends. The alternative is 30 days to vacate and no lease renewal anywhere in my property portfolio. Patricia grabbed my arm. We accept. All of it. Whatever you need, we'll comply with every term. There's one more thing, I said quietly. This isn't just about legal compliance or business introductions. This is about fundamental respect. Derek's company is real. His work matters. My career mattered. Kyle needs to learn that lesson, but so do the rest of you. So here's the final term. You will never again dismiss someone's achievements because they make you uncomfortable. You will never again teach children that other people's success is threatening. You will never again use mockery as a weapon against your own family members. If I hear that any of you has reverted to the old patterns, the lease terminates immediately. No second chances. The garage went silent. Finally, Gerald spoke. We understand. And Thomas, thank you. Thank you for not just destroying us. Thank you for giving us a chance to be better. 3 weeks later, Gerald called with an update. I set up a meeting for Derek with Thompson Logistics. They run a fleet of 400 trucks across Western Canada. Their operations manager has type 2 diabetes, and he's very interested in the monitoring device. Derek's presenting next week. That's excellent work, Gerald. I mean it, Thomas. Derek's brilliant. The technology is genuinely revolutionary. I was wrong about everything. I couldn't see it because I was too busy being envious. I know. Are we okay? As brothers? We're getting there. Keep working on it. Kyle's internship started the following Monday. Derek called me that first evening, surprised. Grandpa, Kyle actually asked intelligent questions today. Real questions about the sensor calibration and the data processing. He wasn't just going through the motions. Good. He's learning. He told me he's been reading about medical devices every night. He wants to understand what he destroyed. 2 months later, Derek's company secured funding. Not the original Boston firms they'd moved on, but a consortium of Canadian healthcare investors who saw the potential after successful field tests with the trucking fleet Gerald had arranged. The funding round was smaller than originally anticipated, 8 million instead of 12, but it was enough to move to production. Kyle asked if he could continue interning part-time during the school year. Derek agreed. Patricia sent me a thank you card, handwritten, 3 pages long, detailing everything they'd learned about humility, respect, and the dangers of envy. Gerald stopped by my workshop one Saturday afternoon. We didn't talk about the incident. We just worked together on a vintage motorcycle engine he was rebuilding, the comfortable silence of 2 men who'd finally reached an understanding. Ruth called to apologize for her role in dismissing Derek's work. She'd attended his company's official launch event and admitted she hadn't realized how substantial the operation was. The family dynamics didn't transform overnight. Patterns established over 40 years don't disappear because of one dramatic intervention. But something fundamental shifted. When Derek's device received its Health Canada approval 18 months later, Gerald was the first person to post about it on social media. When Kyle graduated high school and announced he wanted to study biomedical engineering, Patricia cried with pride instead of suggesting he pursue something more practical. I learned something too, though it took me time to articulate it. For years, I'd absorbed the family's dismissiveness. I'd accepted the belittling, the mockery, the constant minimization of my work. I'd told myself it didn't matter, that I knew my own worth, regardless of their opinions. But Derek's devastation that evening in the garage forced me to confront a truth. Silence in the face of disrespect isn't strength, it's surrender. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for people you love is refuse to let them diminish you. The hardest lessons we teach aren't taught through words. They're taught through boundaries, through consequences, through the consistent demonstration that certain behaviors will not be tolerated no matter how much we care for the people exhibiting them. Gerald's jealousy was real, but it was also a choice. Every time he dismissed my work, every time he taught Kyle that our achievements were exaggerated, he was choosing his comfort over truth. He was choosing the safety of not confronting his own insecurities over the growth that comes from genuinely celebrating others' success. Kyle learned that destruction is easy, but creation requires dedication. That expertise isn't pretend just because you don't understand it. That respecting other people's work isn't about diminishing your own value. It's about recognizing that there's room in the world for everyone to succeed. And perhaps most importantly, my family learned that love doesn't mean accepting unacceptable behavior. That supporting family members sometimes means holding them accountable. That true respect isn't given because of blood relations. It's earned through consistent integrity, through acknowledging mistakes, through genuine growth. Years from now, When Kyle is an engineer himself, and I have no doubt he will be, he'll remember the prototype he destroyed and the summer he spent learning why it mattered. He'll remember that actions have consequences, but consequences can be opportunities for growth if we're brave enough to face them. That's the legacy I choose to leave. Not the bridges I designed, or the awards I received, but the moment I stood up and said that our family's success wasn't pretend, wasn't exaggerated, wasn't something to be diminished. The moment I demonstrated that respect isn't optional, that boundaries aren't negotiable, and that sometimes the people who love you most need to be reminded that love without respect is just obligation wearing a mask. Gerald and I will never be as close as we might have been. Too much time passed. Too many dismissive comments accumulated. Too many moments when he chose jealousy over celebration. But we've reached an understanding. He runs his auto shop with proper permits now, and he celebrates Derek's achievements genuinely. That's enough. Because at the end of the day, we don't get to control whether people respect us, but we absolutely get to control whether we accept disrespect. And the moment you stop accepting it, the moment you establish clear boundaries and enforce them consistently, you give other people the opportunity to rise to your standards. Some will, some won't, but at least you'll know you stood for something that mattered. Your own dignity, your own worth, and the value of the work you've spent a lifetime building.